Just 4 months later, going back to the article, just 4 months later, the military deposed the elected president, Mohamed Bazoum. Niger's army installed prime minister this week visited Russia for talks on boosting military cooperation. So just 4 months later, make sure I'm not missing anything. Yeah, just 4 months later, the military deposed the elected president, Mohamed Bazoum. Niger's army installed prime minister this week visited Russia for talks on boosting military cooperation. That's huge. Russia, through its powerful Wagner mercenary group, has also been active in Mali, the Central African Republic, and allegedly Burkina Faso. So moves are already being made. Engagement is already being made. And they have their reasons, I don't know. But relationships are everything. Or most things, at least. Mali Fee, if I pronounced that correctly, the top U.S. diplomat for Africa. So there is a diplomat for Africa. Oh, yeah. So there is a diplomat for Africa, respectfully. Forgive my ignorance on that. Shout out Mali Fee. Back to the article. Mali Fee, the top U.S. diplomat for Africa who visited Niger in December, said that Niger should look at Mali's descent since aligning with Russia. I had to do research on that. I'm not quite sure. I know that could be a PR approach or approach to deter, people from engaging and working and building relationships. I'm not sure. But it says Mali's descent since aligning with Russia. Quote, "This isn't a model that I would want to follow," end quote, she told reporters. Quote, "We have demonstrated track records there. We have demonstrated track records there that they are well aware of, and we hope they have the right decision. We hope they make the right decision." Excuse me, y'all, I don't know what I'm doing. Quote, I'll read that again. "We have demonstrated track records there that they're well aware of, and we hope they make the right decision," she said. And I don't know how then you gotta look at, okay, well, if they make the decision, how does that work with y'all? Like, what does that look like to y'all? What? And this is where diplomacy is so important. Peace is so important. Ironing out wrinkles well in advance, as early as possible, is so important. And sometimes these things are happening by design. Both sides are in on it. Times these things happen because of it's just that time. You know what I mean? But you always, as a leader, you're looking at, in the world, in the world, diplomacy and where you can, in the world where you can try to keep peace. Very important for leadership to always look to keep peace and build working relationships. A lot of times things boil down to money, though, from what I'm learning. A lot of times things boil down to money. Back into the article. Ivory Coast has been among the most outspoken countries against the Niger coup, backing sanctions with President Alassane Ouattara initially musing about joint West African military action to restore democracy. Blinken will also look to show Washington's softer side, including by attending a football match in Abidjan during the Africa Cup of Nations. Can never go wrong with that. Building relationships at the minimum is definitely showing the softer side. The softer side is the humane side. That it's not all business. We're human, and we're equal in that regard. That's another conversation, but that's what, to me, I feel is the softer side. The business side, the harder side is the business side. Nothing personal, it's business type situation. And football, especially in Africa, I believe is the largest viewed and participated sport. I know the NBA just started the NBA Africa, and they're actually having NBA opportunities, and they mentioned like 4 different cities or countries in Africa. I'll see if I can find that article and put that up for y'all to take a look at. So the NBA is making moves out there. Look at the ownership of the NBA. I'm not quite sure. Just got to look it up and see what all those roles play. Back to the article. In Nigeria, Africa's largest economy and home to the headquarters of West African Regional Bloc, ECOWAS. Not quite sure what that stands for. I'm going to look this up to see what it stands for. I'm not sure if it's going to do it for me. She said, oh, okay. Excuse me. I'll read that sentence again. In Nigeria, Africa's largest economy and home to the headquarters of West African Regional Bloc, ECOWAS, Blinken will head to Abuja to meet President Bola Ahmed Tinubu and also tour the bustling metropolis Lagos. U.S. President Joe Biden, who vowed a new interest in Africa when he welcomed African leaders to Washington in December 22, had promised to visit in 2023, but did not do so. And a trip is seen as increasingly unlikely this year as he focuses on re-election. I don't know what to say on that. I know a lot's going on. People keep these things in mind. It may not be a big deal, but people keep these things in mind. He promised. That's why people don't. When I ran for office, I learned this, and when I was assisting with campaigns, I spoke this and trained this. Do not use the word promise. Don't use the word promise. When I was campaigning, I used the word promise and trust me a lot. And those aren't words to use. And when I'm working on campaigns, you don't want to use promise and trust me because things happen to where you can't do it. First of all, things happen for a number of different reasons where you can't do it, and you don't want to make promises you can't keep. I think of the movie Liar Liar. Shout out Jim Carrey. When his son in the movie eventually, didn't really. Well, his former wife, was fed up with the promises because she knew you're not going to keep them, and the son used to always still believe him, and his dad used to always have some good reasons or excuses, but eventually I think I was kind of faint, but the son ended up not believing the promises and stop promising because you're not following through. So again, this is not a yay or nay critique. I'm just reading the article, sharing my thoughts in general, keeping it to where it's respectful for all parties involved. Moving on, combating unease in Africa. I have a picture here. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is set to watch an African Cup of Nations match in Abidjan, where a vendor is seen watching on television on January 16th, 2024. When I look at the Africa Cup of Nations, I think of U.S.A, and I also think of WACO U.S.A. WACO is the World Association of Kickboxing Organizations. It is the governing body for kickboxing across the world. And they have WACO USA, WACO Mexico, WACO Canada. These are the various sanctioned WACO bodies that represent WACO in their respective countries. So I think of WACO USA, the World Association of Kickboxing Organizations, United States of America, now known as Team USA Kickboxing. Now known as U.S.A. Kickboxing. U.S.A. Kickboxing. It's been approved as a USA national team, and by the time you're reading this or listening to this podcast or video, if it hadn't happened yet, kickboxing is on the cusp of becoming becoming an Olympic sport, and are scheduled to, if that's the case, scheduled to compete on American soil in 2028 in America. Kickboxing. And I say that because I've had an opportunity to work with USA Kickboxing and promote promote 3 national championships in the city of Nashville. along with a body called Team USA Nashville, which was a group of, if you will, African American men led by Coach Kevin Walker, who is a USA kickboxing coach, trainer, and director for the state of Tennessee at this time of the video being created. And he has a great story, which I'll put in the link for you to check out. And because of that, I had an opportunity to help promote, fundraise, strategic partnerships, ticket sales, and everything in between, PR, media relations, opening ceremony, the meet and greet the day before the opening ceremony, the after party, the weigh-ins, not as much in the weigh-ins, but just being a part of the whole situation. Fight nights, I had a chance to help promote USA Kickboxing versus USA Canada. I helped promote USA Kickboxing versus USA Kickboxing versus, what did I say, USA Canada? USA Kickboxing versus Team Canada, or Canada Kickboxing, and USA Kickboxing versus Spain Kickboxing. So I've had a chance to promote and host 2 national teams to come to U.S. soil to compete. I want to say I was a part of bringing in millions of dollars of revenue for the city of Nashville and the state of Tennessee through hotel space. And these people, we've had over, 1,000 people, over 200 fighters compete in these, each at least 250 fighters compete and signed up to compete in the USA championships that I was a part of each. So 750 fighters. That's not including their trainers and the family that came down and supporters and fans that came to this area. I helped with securing the venue and funding and managing relationships, vendors, all that. So when I bring it back to say, when I think of Africa Cup of Nations, people may not think those are big deals, but they're big deals. Because I can think of the World Games, which is just under the Olympics. And the World Games, I've had a chance to some degree, dabble in and be around the IOC, International Olympic Committee, through the USA Kickboxing Administration. And and I've seen USA Kickboxing host various national, events domestically. So these type of, the USA, the Secretary of State for the United States of America going to the African Cup of Nations, it's a big deal. I didn't want to dismiss that. Going back to the article, thank y'all for allowing me to rant. Just want to give you some context as to why I'm talking international relations. Even before the Middle East crisis, in which the United States has been nearly isolated in its staunch support of Israel, many in Africa had watched uneasily as the West devoted billions of dollars to Ukraine in its fight against a Russian invasion. I won't get into it. Blinken will arrive in Ivory Coast on Monday, days after a visit by Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi. Days after. I remember, what movie was that? There was a movie, I think it was, what movie was that? It was the Michael Jordan movie that came out, and I forgot what it's called, but the movie where they were talking about Michael Jordan and Nike taking the risk of creating the shoe and going through the whole process, and Michael Jordan at the time was contemplating on which brand to go with. And I want to say the executive for Nike told Michael Jordan's mom, look, because they went first. They went first. And Nike executive told Michael Jordan's mom, hey, look, when this brand comes in to talk with you and your son and your family, look at their body language as they're doing this, and they're going to say these things. And if they do that, just keep us in mind and call us back, because we're keeping it genuine and 100 with you. That was the pitch. Keep these. So if they come in with this type of attitude, if you will, and they bring up these things, that lets you know you're no different than anybody else. Now, that may have been the case, but if Michael Jordan's mom and family had met the other brands first, those brands would have did their thing, and then Nike would have came in after, and then Nike would have said, hey, did they do these things? And then the family had to look back and say, you know what, they did. and they still take it under consideration. But being able to say, hey, be on and looking out for the entity's best interest, if that makes sense. And so I'm not saying what was before or after. I'm just kind of giving you a perspective of how deep this goes in perceptions. And so I think that if back to the Michael Jordan movie, if the Nike executive did not say, hey, look out for these things and make sure you ask these questions, they probably would not have got a call back. Back to the article. I'm reading that sentence again. Blinken will arrive in Ivory Coast on Monday, days after a visit by Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi. While U.S.-China tensions have eased, which I'm glad to hear, Washington considers Beijing its top long-term rival and has pitched itself as a better partner for Africa than Beijing, whose specialty is major infrastructure projects financed through loans. I have so much to say about that, but I'm not going to get into it, because that's a whole other conversation. Whose specialty is major infrastructure projects financed through loans. Fee rejected talk of a U.S.-China quote soccer mom end quote on African soil, saying quote, if China didn't exist, we would still be fully engaged in Africa. Africa is important for its own sake, and it's important for American interest, end quote. I'll read that again. I'm going to not do the quotes, though. Fee rejected talk of a U.S.-China soccer mom. I'm sorry, not soccer mom, soccer match. I said soccer mom the first time. Forgive me, y'all. I'm messing this whole thing up, and I'm making the Daily Mail look bad. Forgive me. Fee rejected talk of a U.S.-China soccer match on African soil, which would be cool to see, saying if China didn't exist, we would still be fully engaged in Africa. Africa is important for its own sake, and it's important for American interest. And I wonder why that was said, if Africa didn't exist. I mean, China, I'm sorry, if China didn't exist. I'm messing up these words, y'all. That is me, and I apologize. You don't have to be great to start, but you do have to start to be great. What do you mean by that is, you learn from the things that you can fix, also known as mistakes. And what I'm learning right now is to slow down and read each word. And all I can do is apologize for my ignorance and work on getting better. So I'm going to slow down and try this again. I do acknowledge that, as we all should. Fee rejected talk of a U.S.-China soccer match on African soil, saying, if China didn't exist, we would still be fully engaged in Africa. Africa is important for its own sake, and it's important for American interest. Mark Green, a former U.S. ambassador to Tanzania and congressman who is now president of the Wilson Center think tank, said that while China will inevitably come up, African leaders will not respond well if it dominates the country. Now, when they said Mark Green, I did not know he was a former U.S. ambassador to Tanzania. I've done plenty of community engagement work with Representative Mark Green, and I'll leave those links in the description. I had no idea. And that's my point. Like, get out there and do the work. And all those things will start to add up and work together. And I will send you the links to the relationship. It's not like a relationship. It's just just building a relationship. That's all it is. The representative doesn't owe me anything. And respectfully, I would understand if the representative continued to do what the representative did. I don't, but I just make it a point to meet individuals and build a working relationship that's cordial. And I can genuinely say I have at least a cordial relationship, not nothing major. I don't have on speed dial or anything like that. But I've done some community engagement work. And that's what I mean by, being an elected official, with a party and then not rerunning and then going across the aisle to build working relationships. Like, all those things play a role in diplomacy. So I'll read this again, back to the article. Mark Green, a former U.S. ambassador to Tanzania and congressman who is now president of the Wilson Center think tank, said that while China will inevitably come up, African leaders will not respond well if it dominates the conversation. So, representative is saying, you know, if China is dominating the conversation, it won't sit well with Africa, representatives, if you will, in countries of Africa. Because again, a working relationship consists of two parties working together. And I always say when you're in negotiations or when you're talking or building relationships, you want to have a consultant mindset. It's one of my mentors taught me. You want to have a consultant mindset and to be in a position of authority. And what I mean by that is to ask questions. What are you looking to accomplish before we get done today? What does this, whatever you're talking about, what does that look like to you? So that way you can tailor what you have in your thoughts and your plans around that side. And it's already been proven respectfully. I don't know where the source is. I could be speaking out of ignorance that people like to hear themselves talk, or they may not like to hear themselves talk. But the more that they end up talking about themselves or do the majority of the talking, and you're listening in the conversation, I don't know. It's what I've been told. I don't have the facts, but it said that you usually that other person likes you more. Like, dang, because it's not always about you. And so I can see the representative's statement is saying to not dominate the conversation. So any good ambassador, diplomat, or representative should not dominate a conversation. You should bring out information and tailor your information to what is being discussed. So you may want to have 3 or 4 different approaches in leading up to the conversation, just to be ready. The other thing, I'm not at a federal level or international level, but I work with a lot of community leaders and nonprofit leaders, elected officials at the local level, or those that are in the territories that I serve, as well as entrepreneurs and corporate leaders. So I have these conversations with them, but this is the world stage, so it's a different type of situation. But you have to, you don't have to be great to start, but you do have to start to be great. Back into the conversation, back into the article. Or as my man Joe Baker III, and make sure you visit Joe Baker, visit his platforms, jbt3.org, as well as his YouTube channel at the minimum. He has a great story, and he always says in his videos, commercial break me one time, or commercial break me real quick, and then he'll end the commercial break. So that way when he's telling the story, when he's giving his opinion, and then when he's jumping back into the story. So I'm gonna shout out Joe Baker III. Please purchase his books. I think he has 4 books out there. I want you to support the books that he has. Thank you for doing that. So cutting off commercial break. And again, I'm giving that shout out to Joe Baker III. I don't know where he got it from, but I want to recognize where recognition is due. And so, at least where I got it from. I'm not saying that he came up with it and people don't say it around the world. He just, I wouldn't have thought of that without watching his stories and videos. So make sure you support my guy. Back to the conversation. Political leaders tend to go to Africa because of security or China or problems. In fact, listening to African leaders, their hopes, their dreams, their capacities is the way we brighten the world's future, said Green, pointing out that the continent has the world's youngest population. That's so funny because I have I don't know, I'm not going to speak on it, but it's so funny. It's so funny because I didn't know Representative Green really got into the international relations, especially African diaspora countries like that, and has experience being a U.S. ambassador. And it's so funny. Not funny, but it's just a coincidence. Back to the article. There are short-term issues, but this is a long-term investment, he said. That's powerful. There are short-term issues, but there are short-term issues, but this is a long-term investment, he said. There are short-term issues, but this is a long-term investment, he said. I used to be on this radio show once every month, really for diversity purposes. And I learned of my 2.5 years being on this radio and being a regular and bringing on community leaders in the urban areas that really didn't get a chance to, wasn't able to promote what they have going on, being a nonprofit or their business. I always remember, and the host is a professional former news anchor and very engaged in the community. So I learned a lot from this host. And I remember the host would always, say, down just make, not in a negative way, but in love, you be mindful of what you're saying, because people are going to fact check you, or they're going to just kind of, it's just be mindful of what you're saying, pretty much. And if you're not quoting things correctly, or you don't have all the information, make sure you get those things. And that was out of love, nothing like, and I'm probably butchering how it was told to me, but that's what I think when I'm quoting these people in the article, and I'm not using the proper quote, I'm doing them a disservice, and I apologize about that. And that's why I'm going to continue to slow down. So I've had a lot of great training, a lot of great mentors that really poured into me, and I'm so fortunate. So I'll read that last sentence again, back to the article. Quote, there are short-term issues, but this is a long-term investment, end quote, he said, he being Representative Mark Green. The United States has been developing closer relationships with Angola, a major oil producer, since its transition to democracy. After supporting UNITA rebels in the country's decades of civil war. Angola, along with close U.S. ally Kenya, has worked to broker an end to fighting in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, which accuses Rwanda of backing rebels there. Now, it's so funny, and I don't have any pool or anything like that, but here are two countries that I mentioned. I never read this article. It was my first time reading the article. Here's two countries that I mentioned that I've had a chance to work with as far as their former residents. The Democratic Republic of the Congo, and no, not Rwanda, I'm tripping. I'm thinking of the Republic of Malawi, not Rwanda, I'm sorry. See, so it wasn't Rwanda. But the Democratic Republic of the Congo, there's some pull there. Now, I want to say, before I forget, I was given a story. I was saying a story, I think it was about U.S.A. kickboxing, and it jumped from, and it was all stemming from, there was a point I was making. I forgot which story I was saying. I think it was U.S.A. kickboxing. It was on my mind, but I wanted to finish these last few sentences, and I forgot. But it'll come back to me hopefully in a few seconds. But that's the end of the article. Share or comment on this article, which is Blinken to refocus on Africa as Russia, China make gains. Leave your thoughts. This is international relations, very sensitive. So you definitely have to have emotional intelligence and really have a heart for people, because I think that's the only way to kind of avoid maybe some challenges, because you want to find a way to make it work. Now, if there's no way to make it work, then there's no way to make it work. But if you can, you want to find a way to make it work. And it looks like a lot of the more world leaders are recognizing that Africa is a great relationship, or the countries within Africa are great relationships to have. And, when you're competing at the world level and then you start building relationships in developing areas, all you're doing is strengthening what you have, because you can get support, or maybe if you're down and they start to rise up and you do it the right way, they can help you out. It's just support at the end of the day. And so I'm glad to see there's a refocus. And one of my biggest things for myself I take out of this is to focus. And if I can help you avoid the RE of something, RE meaning, let's see if it pops up here. It keeps not doing it for some reason. Okay, but at any rate, the is RE, so like to refocus or regain or remember. I think it's basically just do something over again. So if you really want to avoid doing something over again, or you want to start how you want to finish. You know what I mean? Again, nothing that anything in this article, nobody's doing anything wrong. This is not, I'm not a part of this in any way. This is not my lane, but I'm just giving you some insight from my perspectives of where my world is and where I'm going, and using this article as a learning lesson for me. I'm just sharing my thoughts with you at the end of the day, and I would love to get your thoughts. And if thank you if you felt this message was worth, or this conversation, or this this article that I gave my feedback and review on was of any value to you. You can definitely donate to me at least $1 to my Cash App or PayPal. Cash App being $E1 Connect, PayPal being www.paypal.me, that's ME, /E1 Connect. And when I say E1 Connect, that's the letter E, the numerical number 1, CONNECT. Thank you for liking, following, subscribing. If you have any thoughts, leave them in the comments. In professional love, we're here to unite and to bring peace and to make our neighbor's job of life as easy as possible, as we want our neighbors to make their job of life as easy as possible for us. And that's through our actions and through our leadership, through emotional intelligence, through conversations. And in every environment, you can't do that. But in most environments, you can. And in the ones that you can, you definitely want to exercise that, because that's the most humane thing to do. You know, and there was a point I wanted to bring up. It's going to forget me. The story, I don't think it was U.S.A. kickboxing. I think I got into that one. Let me just go through this one more time to see, because there was a point that I never finished. I didn't finish the story to something, and it just hit me. I may not be able to find it. Please let me find it. That'll refresh my memory. Shoot. If I find it, I'll put in the comments what I was going to say. Let to follow. I was given a story, and I didn't finish the story and jumped somewhere else. So before I was talking about U.S.A. kickboxing, but before African Union. I forgot. It's all good. Just going through this one more time, y'all. I'm just going through this article to see if I can remember what I didn't finish saying. I can't find it. I feel like I don't want to hold you all too long. Again, thank you for the donations on Cash App or PayPal. That's in the description. Thank you for liking, subscribing, following, sharing this information. Thank you for being a great individual yourself and being a great neighbor to those around you. I want to say treat others how you want to be treated, and that's in patience and love and respect. I'm hoping so we can all do that. Darn. Oh, that's what it was. So the Tennessee Department of Housing and the Tennessee Department of Labor and Workforce Development, I ended up coordinating a call with those bodies. And I think at the time I set up a call with, it was the ambassador of Jamaica in Washington, D.C. I think it was Jamaica. It might have been another country, but I think it was Jamaica. I'll look at my emails. But it was the ambassador to Jamaica at the minimum. And yeah, I think it was Jamaica. And the reason of the call was to set up some type of workforce program for Jamaicans to come to Tennessee to basically work, and mostly in agriculture, because those are declining job opportunities, or they're available jobs. I think at the time, I must be out of ignorance, people weren't really doing those jobs and they need to be filled. And I knew the people of Jamaica need to make some money. And so I said, okay, well, let's see what that looks like. And so I ended up having a Tennessee, not the director, but a decision maker for the Tennessee Department of Housing, decision maker for Tennessee Department of Workforce Development and Labor, or Labor and Workforce Development, and the ambassador's office of Jamaica on the phone. That was so huge for me that it was an idea, and I conceived it, I believed it, and achieved it by making it happen. And at the point to all that was, at the end of the conversation at the time, and that's a true statement, there wasn't enough housing available to house these non-American residents to be able to have them work. So the work was there, but you need a place to house these individuals. and there was not any work, there was no options or no access. And so the next role was to get with the developer and see what that looks like for them to say, hey, we have housing for people to work and then go back to their country. But then you get into conversations like not in my backyard, which is not a wrong thing. I respect people. They have a right to say not in my backyard. And if it's the right thing to do, it shouldn't be approved. I'm not against that at all. I'm not for nor against it. You exercise what you exercise to make things happen within the legal ramifications. And so when you're saying, hey, and this is probably going to be like a rural area, because you're talking agriculture and you're talking about a rural area. It's not always the case, but it's usually conservative in rural areas of Tennessee. Not always the case, but it usually is. And now you're talking about creating a housing site or a park for African diaspora non-American residents to come work on, at the minimum, farmland, and then go back to their respective country. I haven't had a chance to engage the residents in that conversation. That's obviously a conversation you have to have with your elected officials in those areas. But the state did say at that time that they weren't opposed to the idea, but housing was not available for them to even move it forward. So it's not, somebody might listen to this and take it and run with it. Keep me in mind. If you have the resources for that and you want me to revisit that, shoot me a message or a comment. We can revisit that. And it's up to the state. I'm not advocating or against it. I'm not for, I'm just saying that, I'm all about someone that if there's a solution, if there's a problem, then there's an opportunity for a solution. And if it's something that's going to help from the best of my perspective, society, and that's why, if I'm wrong about that, let me know, educate me so I can get a better understanding and not mess something up out of good intentions. You know what I mean? I'm a student of life. I'm not perfect. I'm always going to learn, and I want people to fact check me and to correct me, not because I'm stupid or an idiot or I don't care. I'm willing to learn and grow, and I'm humble enough to say that. So that's why I feel like we got to kind of start the conversation. But at any rate, thank you again. Leave your thoughts in the comment. If there's any articles that you have that you want me to go over dealing with international relations, especially with the African diaspora countries, I may or may not get into it. This is all in civics. I really don't jump into it because this is already a sticky conversation because there were some names mentioned in here that people may or may not like, be it mercenaries or countries or militias or whatever. I'm not around like that, but when you dabble in that, eventually I'm going to have to get around that. So, I always, give thanks for prayer, protection, covering, and grace. Thankful for grace and walking in love as best as possible, because that's what diplomacy is. Being patient to walk in love to figure this out. And, a lot of times it boils down to money, but, not but, you ask for grace and covering to do those things and to make sure things are win-win. Again, thank you so much for your time. Leave your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for the donation. I look forward to talking with you or connecting with you on the next article.